Hey there drone fans, Rick here again from Drone Valley. I'm back with another vlog where I cover emerging drone technology as well as a whole lot of other high-tech gear that's caught my interest. What I'm hoping to do with these vlogs is to start a conversation between us about the topics I'm covering in that particular segment, because I feel like that exchange back and forth is a really healthy thing. You guys give me a lot of good questions in the comments, you fill in information that maybe I've missed on a particular topic, and really we all get smarter together, which is what I'm shooting for. And honestly, the pace of change is so fast in this technology that I can't possibly stay on top of all of it, and I know a lot of people that watch the channel are experts on some of the technologies I talk about, so hearing from you guys is really good for me because I learn a ton from some of the comments and the interactions I have. So if you find a topic interesting, if you've got questions on it or you've got information I didn't present, drop them in the comments below. I'll get back to you as quickly as I can on some of the questions, and I just think it's a healthy thing for all of us. So in this particular segment, I've got 4 things I want to talk about, and it's pretty packed densely with information, so buckle up because I'm going to go through it pretty quickly. I can't possibly cover any of these topics in depth in a short vlog like this, but if I get enough feedback from you guys that you find a topic interesting, I'll do some follow-on clips and go into more of the details behind the engineering of the technologies. So the 4 things I'm going to talk about today are augmented reality versus virtual reality. I have a lot of questions from you guys about AR versus VR. Which should I use with my drones, or what are they even used for, and explain the technology behind them. So I'll talk a little bit about some of the gear I use for both VR and AR and what my preferences are around it. And again, you've got to make your own decisions on what works for you, but understanding where that landscape is probably a powerful thing. Second thing I'm going to talk about is the Apple Homepod, which I don't want to talk about that product specifically. I'll do a review on it in a separate channel. I want to talk more broadly about the class of devices that I'm going to call ambient computers, because ever since the Amazon Alexa came out, and then the Google Home came out, or Google iHome came out, and now the Apple HomePod, we've got smart computers that are sitting in our kitchens and our bedrooms and our living rooms that are listening for a wake word and then doing things based on that. Now that's an interesting concept that I think you're going to see widespread in technology over the next couple of years. So is it a good thing or a bad thing? I've got opinions on both sides of it, but I think it's really cool. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Third thing I'm going to talk about is a concept that's been in drones for a while, but it's getting a lot smarter recently. It's called VIO, and I'll get into detail of what that's about, but it has to do with the way drones or robots in general can track objects to stay on top of them, follow them around, and avoid other objects. So it's got to have a lot of brains and intelligence inside the drone to do that, as well as some whiz-bang sensors and algorithms, and I'll get a little bit into the details of that. And then the fourth thing I'm going to talk about, which is a new segment I'm adding to these, and I'm laughing because you're going to love what I'm talking about today, is a thing called Gadget Corner, which I'm going to, every vlog, put the last thing in the vlog will be some gadget that I'm playing with that isn't anything to do with technology necessarily, but it's something cool that I found interesting or inventive or useful. And a lot of times the people that invent these things are the unsung heroes of society. Nobody's ever going to recognize it, but it's stuff that I've used that's effective and it's inexpensive and it's something I think you're going to find cool. So the first one's going to be a little bit interesting to see if you guys respond to this one, but we'll get to that at the end, but that'll keep you watching through the clip. All right, so let's talk about the VR versus AR battle that's going on out there. There's a lot of companies diving into this market space, and I've been playing with this technology for years, even before I got the Fat Shark goggles. I know a lot of the FPV flyers out there use the Fat Shark and other goggles, but essentially what this technology does is shift your perspective. So normally when you're flying a quad or doing anything, you're looking at the object you're controlling. The minute you dive into a VR or AR situation, you're looking at an abstract view of that in most cases, so especially in the case of VR. And what I mean by that is, the minute you slide this helmet over your head, you're now watching a screen that's representing what's coming through that camera on the front of that drone. The big difference between AR and VR is with VR, the minute you slide these on your head, it's a total immersive experience. So it's like walking into a dark movie theater and you're watching the screen in front of you and nothing else is getting in your view. So when you put those things on, no matter which model of these you use, you're totally immersed in it, and it's an incredibly cool experience because you feel like you're in the front of that nose cone of the quad when it's flying around, and you're reacting to that. Some of these are getting way more sophisticated where if you turn your head, it'll turn the camera. So you're actually controlling, in some cases, the flight of the drone and the camera position while you're turning your head. So it's really like being in that unit. The challenge with pure VR like this is that you can't really maintain visual line of sight. So according to the FAA today, you need a spotter if you're going to use these kind of technologies, but I love using these technologies. The challenge for an old guy like me, though, is when I shift my perspective that much, it throws my equilibrium off. So maybe it's because I'm a little bit older, but I get really dizzy. So I can't spend more than 20 minutes inside these things. Then I got to take a breath and fly for a little bit, let my head sort of sort itself out. Augmented reality is different. So augmented reality, this is the VIO goggles. I probably should mention these first. So this is the Fat Shark product, exceptionally cool product, really, really popular with the FPV flyers. This is the DJI goggles you've come to know and love. They have a new version out of this called the RE, which is the racing edition, but essentially they do the same thing. Big difference between them. This one has an operating system inside of it. It runs on Android, so you're actually running the DJI Go 4 app inside of here. You don't have any external need for a tablet or a phone. This one is just purely a display device. You've got to connect an HDMI cable up to it, up to your drone and fly through that. So it's essentially a high quality screen. You can also connect up an RF antenna if you're using FPV or some other drones out there to receive that signal directly. These guys, this is the Homepod product. There's a whole class of product that allow you to snap your cell phone into it and actually use your cell phone display through these binoculars on the back. That's the least expensive one. This is probably the next expensive one. This is the most expensive one because there's the most technology packed into it. So that's the VR stuff. And there's a whole host of products in this space. This is augmented reality. Now what's different about augmented reality, like I mentioned a minute ago, is you are involved in seeing what's being broadcast through the FPV, but you're looking, I'm gonna put them on to make me look goofy here. I look like somebody out of Star Trek. I can actually look through the goggles and see the drone. So off to my side, I'm seeing a screen of what's being shown in the FPV camera and all the telemetry information as well, but I'm looking through these glasses at the drone. So the advantage of these, number one, is I don't get vertigo when I'm wearing these, but more importantly, I'm not violating visual line of sight by wearing these. So sliding these on, I can fly solo, not have to have anybody else with me. And I'm telling you, you get used to this pretty quickly, where you can look down and see the FPV view and you can watch your drone, you can still navigate. So for me, these are the ones that I use more often. Now I do use the goggles, all these goggles on a regular basis, but if I'm going out for the day and I've got to fly and I've got to do, you know, a particular shot that I want to get on the beach or whatever it happens to be, I love those VIO goggles and they're fantastic. Now, the advantage to these, it's not like I'm selling you on them, the advantage to these over some of the goggle sets is that I can put glasses on and wear them behind. I can even change the lenses in here to a prescription lenses. So I'm putting them on, it's like putting a pair of glasses on, and the technology behind this is outstanding. And I've done clips on this before where I've explained how they did it. I'm doing a couple more review clips of it as well. This one, just like the DJI goggles, has a separate module that runs an Android operating system, so you don't need anything but this to actually fly with your quad. So the choice is really yours. What's happening with this immersion technology is this class of product beyond drones is being used for things like training sessions or therapy sessions. Let's say, for example, you're afraid of spiders. If you go into a psychologist office, they're going to talk to you about the fear of spiders. You put this thing on, maybe they put you in an environment where you see a spider crawling around. You get used to that over time. Then they put 2 spiders down. So there's a lot of ways to use this to sort of heal people that have aversions to technology. There's also good for training. You know, if you're doing training activities, this is great. These guys are exploding. The augmented reality space outside of drones is exploding. And I'll give you one example. You can put those goggles on today. You can walk into a factory, never seeing a product before. Let's say it's a tractor. You put the goggles on, the tractor's in front of you. The goggles at that point know, if you're doing maintenance on that tractor, what needs to be replaced. And as you glance around the tractor, this is going to light up red. That's a filter. I got to change that. This is a bearing. I got to change that. Even better, if I don't know how to change that bearing, I hit the side of the goggles. It comes up with the manual page that tells you how to change that particular bearing or filter. Like the possibilities long-term for augmented reality are unbelievably cool. Another good example of that is saying you're going to a museum. If you've ever done those museum tours where you're listening to sort of descriptions of the artist and the history behind a particular piece you're looking at, imagine sliding a pair of those on, putting them on your head, and having the artist stand next to it and describe what his painting was about, or have all that information displayed alongside of what you're looking at. Just an incredibly cool world that's going to happen with these. So virtual reality, total immersive experience. Augmented reality, you still have that experience, but you can see the real world. Now, one other hybrid product that's come out, not to delay the conversation, but one other hybrid product that's come out is some of these goggles that you can use your cell phone on. I'm going to call it augmented reality, because what they do is they don't have an opaque front on it. So when you snap your phone into it, it uses your camera on the phone to blend what the camera sees with what's being displayed on the screen. So it's a bit of a hybrid, but again, inexpensive way to go. If you want to do this seriously, for my money, hands down the best augmented reality goggles on the planet. I could argue that these two are pretty close, but I'm going with this guy just because of the larger screens and the enclosed audio components that you get with it. It's just a better, clean solution for me. Although I love this one, I still got to use other things with it. This one, I just put it on my head and I can fly. Let me do that real quick. So I want to look goofy here. Let me put this guy on. So this is what it looks like when it's on your head. And I get a lot of people laughing, but I don't care. I mean, it works. It's just incredibly cool. You put this thing down, you're in that environment, man. It's like you're in that nose cone of that thing and you're flying around. So very, very cool product. I don't care if people giggle, I just love using it. All right, so anyway, that's it for augmented reality. The next thing I'll talk about is the Apple HomePod. Now, again, I don't want to review the product. It's a cool product. I've got some opinions about maybe whose product's cooler, and I'm going to do a separate clip on that. But suffice it to say that what these ambient computers are designed to do is to be vocal or voice assistants for you to do a bunch of stuff in your home. So when the Alexa first came out, the Amazon Alexa, I had it really early because I got to get my hands on any new technology. And it is kind of a crude device when it first came out. It didn't do a lot of stuff. It could play music. It could, do a couple of tasks. It could tell you jokes. It could answer questions. But that technology is becoming really widespread. So the Alexa's grown into an application now that I can order a pizza, call up a cab. I can order things from Amazon. The differences between them, really for me, are how much is intelligence built into the device versus how much does it have to touch the web. So when you look at the Google iHome and the Alexa, both of those have a lot of intelligence built in, but they're touching the web for all kinds of information that they're going to retrieve and bring back to you. Whereas the Apple HomePod at this point is fairly self-contained. There's not a lot of touching the web. The other big difference between them is that the Alexa and the other Google product, the iHome product, are building a log of your conversation. So they're smart enough to know when you talk to it, the microphones inside of it can zero in on exactly where your position is, so it can listen to you even over loud music, but it's listening to what you're asking for, and it's keeping a log of that because it learns your behaviors and it learns your vocal patterns. So it's not only smart enough to answer the questions, but it's getting smarter over time by building a profile of all the people in your house that are going to call its wake name to wake up, so that it's contouring how it responds to your vocal patterns to be more intelligent over time, which I think is awesome, right? It's sort of an artificial intelligence. Where this is going to go, again, the Alexa for me is way out ahead of the other guys. They're doing things like controlling my home now. So I can turn on lights all over my home. I can adjust my thermostat. I can make phone calls to other Alexa units all over the planet. So you can see this disruptive technology that today sits in like a tennis ball can on my desk. Just exploding, because they're going to build it into TVs. They've already started building it into remote controls for a lot of their other Fire products. So I think that ambient computer concept is going to grow by leaps and bounds. And I guess the pro side of it makes my life a whole lot easier because I can ask it a question and it gives me an answer. If it's a complicated math problem or I need to know the weather or some historical fact, I can ask it and I get it immediately. The downside is it's a little bit creepy because the thing's listening to our conversations. Are they listening all the time or just when I wake it up? I don't know. We're going to dig into that and find out. But for me, I like it, and I'm willing to give up a little bit of my privacy to get that kind of immediate response to my questions. The other downside, being a dad, is that in the old days, if we were having a conversation over dinner, I could say it's black. And the family just took the fact that Dad said it was black, so it's probably black. That doesn't work anymore, because if they ask me a question and I answer it and there's any doubt at the kitchen table, they're going to say, Alexa, and they're going to ask the question, so they're going to call BS on me. So it kind of takes my dad prerogative out of the equation, but okay, I'll live with that because it's emerging technology. That's enough about the Apple iPod, or HomePod. So the last thing I'll talk about in the technology space is this concept called VIO, which is a mouthful. And what it stands for is Visual Inertial Odometry. Now that, again, is a mouthful from a technology perspective, but if you break it down, it's not that complicated. So let's start with the first word, visual. It's an optical thing. The drone's got to have some way of seeing what's going on. So visually, it's using a pair of stereoscopic cameras up front to view the environment it's going into. If I talk about inertial, that has to do with movement. So what we're trying to do is track the movement of the drone through a 3D space. And the last one is odometry, which is, again, like in your car, your odometer, which basically keeps track of how far you've gone. So you combine those three together, what you've got is visual tracking, in movement, and distance, right? So it's keeping track of where the drone is in a 3D space. Now, what's really interesting about it is you could say, well, GPS does the same thing. It does, but not really, because it knows where you went, but it's not quite as accurate as this thing building a map and looking for key points along your travel to keep track of where it's gone, and more importantly, avoid thing that's in front of you or track something else it's particularly paying attention to. So when you snap this thing into position to track me through the forest, it's going to look at me, but it's also going to look at all the things around me that are collision points. And in the old days, it did a pretty good job of that, where it would come up to a collision point and stop. If you've flown the new Mavic Air, or if you've flown the new Mavic Air, it is so good. You can run through a thickly dense forest, and it's going to weave in between those trees. Now, to be fair, it's not fast. It's not going to do 45 miles through the forest and avoid those trees, but that has little to do with the technology and more to do with the horsepower required to process all that information, because it's got huge video streams coming in. There are algorithms running in the background, which are proprietary to DJI. Some are open source, but they wrote their own. And it's got all kinds of processing cores that it needs to make sense of that information. Now, what's interesting about it is the VIO technology has been out for quite a long time for robots. So if you've ever watched one of those robotic competitions, my kids were involved in the first program where they build robots and they go and compete. Those had VIO, but that's a two-dimensional robot. It's sitting on the ground. When you have a quad, that whole third dimension makes things exponentially more complex. So having VIO at this point, you're going to see it mentioned by a lot of different vendors. The Evo's got it. A couple other products from the people that built Hesper have it in there, the Mark product from them. A lot of companies are using it. And really what it's going to come down to isn't for me, do you have it in your drone? It's going to be more a matter of how good is it. And how good is it depends on the software and the processing power behind it. So VIO is something you're going to see a lot. Now it's also being used in a lot of other technologies. So you're going to see it, for example, in self-driving cars, or even cars that are augmented driving, what I'll call, where you're basically driving the car, but it's got some type of visual laser in front of it. And it doesn't have to be visual, it could be lasers, looking at the road in front of you, and a deer pops out and slows down. Or in a recent case for me, I rented a car when I was in California on one of my trips, and I had this augmented speed control. So I set the speed control at 65, I'm driving along, some knucklehead cuts in front of me, the car realizes he's too close because of VIO and it slows down. It sees that as a threat and it slows down. So it's a technology you're going to see pervasive in a lot of new gear that's coming out. And again, if you guys find this interesting, I've got a lot of information to talk about how this technology is applied and some of the algorithms behind it. There's been a ton of research going on. But for me, again, as just a nerd, it blows my mind that this little device can not only fly and stay stable and send video information back and keep track of where it's going, but all the stuff that's going on where it's watching its environment, looking for points that can identify as it flies out, so that, heaven forbid, something horrible happens and it has to get home, it can turn around and follow that exact route back to me and even make adjustments if necessary for swaying trees and things. So this VIO concept is big. Look into it. It's really cool stuff. And again, if I get a lot of comments about it and you guys like the concept of me talking further about this stuff, I'll put a whole clip together talking about VIO. All right, so that's it for VIO. Now we're into the Gadget Corner. Now, this is my favorite part of these clips. This first one's going to seem really bizarre, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm laughing a little bit because of what's sitting in front of me on the table here. And I'm thinking, you're tuning in thinking you're going to get a high-tech vlog, and Rick's got something in front of him that doesn't look at all high-tech. Has he lost his mind? Give me a minute to explain it. I think it'll make sense. So I'm lucky enough to live in a part of the Northeast where it's still pretty rural, which means I've got a lot of wide open spaces to fly my quad and explore. And I'm close enough to woods and lakes and fields and farms where on any given day I can put the quad up to 200 feet and find some beautiful countryside to film. And I love that. I also love the fact that being we're so remote, I've got a lot of wildlife that just kind of roams around. So we see, parades of deer through the backyard, and we've got foxes and raccoons and bunnies and probably box turtles out there someplace. And I love that when I was, bringing the kids up when they were younger, looking out that back window and seeing a deer just kind of innocently nibbling on a bush back there. It's just a cool thing to have it in your backyard. But because I live near farms and open fields, we get field mice. Now, I don't mind field mice, but they want to get in the house, and my family goes nuts if there's a mouse in the house. And I can't blame the mice because, there's a quote out there when they asked John Dillinger, why did you rob banks? Why do you rob the banks? His quote was, because that's where the money is. So with the mice, that's where the food is. Of course they're going to try and get in the house to get at my Oreo cookies and all the other good stuff. So it's been a personal challenge of mine since we moved out here to be the guardian of the house, to make sure that the mice that got in, got the heck back out, and I couldn't kill them. We have young kids, and there's nothing more horrific to me than Dad coming up out of the basement with a dead mouse dangling off the bottom of a trap. So I decided right out of the gate, I'm going to do a catch and release program and sort of an amnesty program that any mouse that get caught in my house, I'm going to catch him or her. Probably I won't catch a lot of hers because they're smarter, but I'll catch them. I'll give them a good talking to and say, you shouldn't come back here, stay out of the house. And then I'll take them to a field 3 or 4 miles away. I'll let them loose. We'll say a couple of kind words to each other. They'll go on their way. They're happy. I'll come home and I'll be happy. So I've had this program going for the last couple of decades and it's worked out really well. But during the course of events, I'm constantly looking as a nerd for the latest and greatest mousetrap, right? And there's another quote that said, build a better mousetrap and the world will beat a path to your door. Well, I've searched, and I've probably looked at every mousetrap that's out there that's a live catch mousetrap, and I've tried all of them, and they're not all good. A lot of them stink, a lot of them are terrible, and I've tried, again, pretty much every trap you've seen on Amazon or on the web. I bought one, brought it in, and done a side-by-side comparison to test it. I've even tried the traps where it's sort of a plank that I'm laughing, the plank that the mice walk and they fall into a bucket. Now, it makes sense on paper to do that, but think about that poor mouse. I mean, that fall off that diving board is probably enough to break every bone in his body. So, okay, he's alive, but that's still not a healthy mouse. So I couldn't use that one. A lot of the traps that look like this trap don't work like this trap. So they look similar, but the latching mechanisms don't work and the bait's really complicated to use. So again and again, every year, I have this trap as my default trap, and it's a wonderful trap. And I test it against other traps and they don't hold up. So if you're looking for a mouse trap, This is going to be geek endorsed. This is the one you want to own, and I'll explain why in a couple of seconds. But for starters, look at this. It's a little house. It's adorable. So when the mouse gets caught in there, he stays in that little house. What a little friendly place for him to be until I show up and say, uh-oh, there's a mouse in the trap. Let's take him upstairs and give him the talking to. And then, strange as this sounds, and I don't think it's crazy, but my wife does, I'll take a picture of the mouse, and then I keep those pictures on the refrigerator for the entire winter. So if that mouse shows back up, if somehow he's figured out how to get back from that field 5 miles away and back into my house, he's going to get a really stern talking to, and I'll take him to a different field. But at any rate, the trap is fantastic. And what I like so much about it is it's incredibly simple to use. So on the one end, there's a bait door. You open that up. I'll set that aside. Now for bait, I use crackers. For some reason, they love peanut butter. I love peanut butter too. So I kind of load this thing up with peanut butter. I slide it in the end like that, and I put the door back on. That's it. Close it up, you're done. And then to set the trap, you push that end down. And that's pretty much it. And what happens, it's basic physics. The mouse goes in this end, their weight hits that trip thing, and the door pops closed. So let me simulate that real quick. So if this wasn't in the way, if they wander in this end and touch that trip plate with their weight, it closes, and they're inside the trap. Plenty of air inside there. They can nibble on the cracker while they're there waiting for me to come pick them up, and it just works. And what I like so much about it, and again, all the traps I compare it to kind of look like this. There's a lot of them out there that have kind of copied this, that they don't work as well. Some of the ones that are brown, that are kind of half shape, they're the sort of a cylindrical shape. You can't fit the bait in the end of it, or if you put the bait in the end of it and there's peanut butter on it, it'll get all over everything and you can't clean it out. This one, I catch the mice, put them back outside, and I give this to my wife, and she cleans it up, and we're happy as can be. We're happy as clams. So this is the one you want to own. I completely endorse this. Again, I'll put a link below where you can go find it on Amazon. It's called the Smart Mousetrap, and it's even got a cute little picture. I'm laughing. A cute little picture of a mouse over here with a graduation hat on doing like a lesson. So this company is whimsical, and they're incredibly effective. So for my money, the smartest mousetrap I've ever seen, and that's close to 15 years of testing. So if you're like me and you get mice in your house and you don't want to kill them, this is the guy you want to use. Now again, I know this has nothing to do with technology or electronics, but for me, I'm a fan of technology that works. And a lot of times, these kind of inventions, these kind of like innovative things, they're like the unsung heroes of our culture, where they invent something like this, and there's some guy out there that may someday watch this clip and say, I invented that mousetrap. I want to thank you for doing that, because this thing works like completely fine for me, and I love it. So at any rate, cool mousetrap. Just thought I'd do this as part of my Gadget Corner because I want to talk about gadgets I use. This is on a shelf in the garage. Come next fall, I'm going to break them out again. I'm sure they're going to be mice in the house, and I'll catch them in this trap. So anyway, enough about the mousetrap, but Smart Mousetrap, and I'll put a link below where you can go find that. That's pretty much it for today. I like to have a lot of fun in these clips, and this last section is going to be fun. I'm going to find a lot of kind of crazy things that I use on a regular basis to sort of let you know about and endorse them if I can. And I feel like if I like it, you might like it. So if you don't like it, let me know, but please don't beat me up, because again, we're just having fun on the channel, and it's my channel. I can do what I want. So I'm going to talk more about some of these gadgets at the end of the vlogs. That's pretty much it for today. I went through a lot of material really fast, so if you have any questions or comments about the real important stuff I did before the Gadget Corner, drop them in the comments below, and I promise to get back to you with whatever answers I can. If you want to spark a debate about anything I've talked about, let me know if you really liked it, because I'll do a much more in-depth clip where I'll spend time talking about the technology and engineering behind it, whether it be VIO or some of the ambient computer stuff that I'd mentioned on the top, or even the VR/AR conversation. I'm happy to get back into that. But again, thank you so much for watching. I love putting these clips together. I have a lot of fun doing it. Gives me a chance to think about the tech a little bit more than I would normally. And talking to you guys is like talking to a good friend. So the information I give you, I hope you're finding valuable. I really, really value the feedback. I really value the subscriber count going up. So whatever you can do to help that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button, because I got a lot more cool stuff coming and a bunch of other goofy stuff coming too. But hopefully you're finding this stuff enjoyable and fun and informative. So thanks again for watching. Until next time, happy flying.